The 1980s sun cast long shadows over Harlo Compound, a gated enclave where the elite of military, political, and business worlds mingled behind ivy-covered walls. I, Rachel Lynn, was the only daughter of George Lynn, a healer whose wealth and influence made our family a pillar of this exclusive society. Our sprawling villa, with its marble fountains and rose gardens, stood as a testament to my father's success, but it was also a stage for the expectations that shaped my youth. From childhood, my father had planned my future with precision, raising 3 child grooms alongside me. Boys were chosen for their potential to become titans in their fields, each a potential husband to secure our legacy. With his sharp jaw and steely eyes, Andrew Lewis was destined for military greatness, already leading drills with a commander's poise by 16. Peter Sullivan, charming and quick-witted, had a politician's knack for winning hearts, his speeches captivating even the sternest elders. Calculating and ambitious, Michael Evans was a prodigy in commerce, turning small investments into fortunes before he could vote. My father saw them as perfect matches, each a key to elevating the Lynn name. They were my playmates, my confidants, growing up in our home under my father's patronage. Yet when the time came to choose, I defied his wishes, my heart drawn to Ryan Carter, a man whose quiet strength and shadowed past set him apart. Ryan was a commander in Harlo's private militia, a figure both revered and whispered about. At 30, he was older, his face carved with the weight of battles fought and secrets kept. Rumors swirled of a past divorce and 3 adopted children he raised alone, making him an unconventional choice. My father was aghast when I announced my decision. "Rachel, have you lost your senses?" he thundered, his pipe trembling. "Any of those boys, Andrew, Peter, Michael, could secure your future. Why choose a man burdened with another's children?" I held my tongue, unable to explain my pull toward Ryan, a man whose rare smiles hinted at depths my father couldn't see. In my past life, I ignored that pull, bending to my father's will. First, I married Andrew, the military star, bringing a dowry that could fund armies. Our wedding was a spectacle, the compound buzzing with envy and pride. But 1 month later, a training accident claimed him, or so I was told. His body was lost in a fiery crash. Grief consumed me, my days blurred by tears. Then Peter, the political darling, offered solace and a new beginning. I accepted, hopeful, only for an assassin's bullet to steal him on our wedding day, his blood staining my white gown as screams echoed through the hall. The compound whispered I was cursed, a harbinger of death. Michael, the business magnate, stepped forward, his wealth silencing the rumors. Our grand ceremony promised redemption, but poison took him that night, an old rival's revenge. 3 husbands, 3 deaths, all within a year. The label cursed woman clung to me like damp rot. No suitor dared approach, and no friend lingered long. The compound's elite, once my allies, turned their backs, their pity sharper than their scorn. My father's fortune dwindled, drained by my dowries and the cost of my tarnished name. I lived out my days in our villa, its gardens overgrown, its halls silent save for my footsteps. Loneliness was my companion, regret was my punishment. I mourned not just my husbands, but the girl I'd been, trusting, hopeful, blind to the truths hidden beneath their vows. As I lay dying, my father's gaunt face haunted me. Once robust, he'd starved in poverty, his wealth stolen, his pride broken. "If only I could taste 1 more cornbread bun," he'd whispered, his final words a knife to my heart. My last breath carried that guilt, my soul heavy with questions unanswered. Why had fate been so cruel? Why had love betrayed me so completely? In that final darkness, I didn't expect an answer, or a second chance. But it seemed fate had other plans that would unravel the lies of my past and set me on a path to reclaim my life. Death was not the end I expected. As my soul drifted from the husk of my body, the world I'd known, the opulent Harlo Compound, its marble halls, and whispered secrets, faded into a gray haze. I lingered, a specter bound by regret, watching the life I'd lost unravel in ways I could never have imagined. The truth that met me in that liminal space was a blade sharper than any grief. Andrew Lewis, Peter Sullivan and Michael Evans, the three men I'd loved and buried, were alive. They hadn't perished in accidents, assassinations, or poisonings. They had faked their deaths, each one a calculated act to escape me and pledge their hearts to my stepsister Emily. Emily, the maid's daughter, had grown up in our villa's shadows, her soft smiles and downcast eyes masking a cunning I'd never suspected. Her mother, Clara, had wormed her way into our family after my mother's death, a tragedy I'd blamed on illness until now. In my spectral state, I saw Emily laughing, her white gown catching the sunlight as Andrew, Peter, and Michael knelt before her, swearing loyalty. "We did it for you," Andrew said, his voice fervent. "Rachel's cruelty to you, her jealousy, it had to end." Peter's eyes gleamed with devotion. "We took her wealth and her name and left her cursed." Michael's smile was cold. "We're free to build our empire with you as our heart." Their words burned. Cruelty? Jealousy? I'd been firm with Emily, scolding her for neglecting chores or lingering too long with the grooms, but I'd never hated her. I'd seen her as a family despite her mother's icy presence. Yet they believed her tales, her tears, her stories of my supposed malice over the years we'd shared. The grooms, raised by my father's generosity, had betrayed us both. They'd siphoned our fortune, dowry by dowry, until my father starved, his dreams of cornbread buns a pitiful echo. With Emily, they fled Harlo, living lavishly abroad while I withered in disgrace, the compound's cursed woman. Emily's motives crystallized in that ghostly vision. She wasn't just a schemer. She was driven by a deep-seated resentment from her mother's tales. Clara had filled her head with stories of being lesser, servant to the Lynns, forever beneath us. Clara whispered, "You're smarter than Rachel." I saw now planting seeds of ambition. Emily didn't just want my place. She wanted to erase me, to claim the love, status, and power she believed were her due. The grooms, dazzled by her fragility and flattery, were her tools, blind to her manipulation. Rage and sorrow churned within me, but something else stirred. A pulse of energy, warm and ancient, like a heartbeat from the earth itself. Was it fate, pitying my pain? A deity moved by my father's suffering? I couldn't name it, but it wrapped around my soul, tugging me backward through time. The haze dissolved and I gasped, my eyes snapping open to a familiar study. Polished oak shelves, the scent of my father's pipe, the crackle of a hearth. I was alive, reborn on the day my father asked whom I'd marry, the day that sealed my past life's doom. He sat across from me, robust and ruddy-cheeked, not the gaunt shadow he'd become. "Rachel," he said, chuckling, "you've always clung to Andrew since you were kids. You'll pick him for next week's wedding. He's a solid choice, military elite, disciplined." His confidence, so complete of hope, broke me. Tears spilled before I could stop them, my hands trembling as I saw not the frail man who'd starved, but the father who'd given everything for me. In my past life, I'd chosen Andrew, draining our wealth and paving the way for betrayal. This time, I could change it all. "Dad," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "I've made my decision. I want Ryan Carter." His pipe clattered to the desk, his eyes wide. "Ryan? That commander with 3 kids? Rachel, he's divorced and older. Why is he over the boys I raised for you?" I swallowed, unable to reveal the groom's treachery or my impossible return. Instead, I met his gaze. "It's what I want, Dad. Please." The weight of that choice, defying the compound's expectations, choosing a man whispered about in shadows, settled over me. But at that moment, I felt the spark of the force that had brought me back, urging me to rewrite my fate, protect my father, and unravel the lies that had destroyed us. The air in my father's study was thick with the scent of aged leather and tobacco, a comforting contrast to the cold haze of my spectral past. My heart pounded as I stood before him, George Lynn, the man who'd once been the bedrock of Harlo Compound's elite society. His broad shoulders and ruddy cheeks radiated strength, a far cry from the skeletal figure I'd last seen, whispering for cornbread as starvation claimed him. The sight of him now, alive, vibrant, unleashed a flood of tears I couldn't contain. In my past life, I'd chosen Andrew Lewis, Peter Sullivan, and Michael Evans, each marriage a step toward our ruin. Their faked deaths and their loyalty to Emily had stripped us bare, leaving my father to die in poverty. This time, I'd rewrite that ending. "Rachel, what's wrong?" my father asked, his brow furrowing as he fumbled for a handkerchief. "You've been quiet all morning. Is it the wedding talk?" He leaned forward, his voice softening. "You've always been close to Andrew since you were kids. He's your choice for next week's ceremony, isn't he? A military elite, disciplined, loyal, I approve." His confidence, so complete of hope, twisted the knife of memory. With his steely gaze, Andrew had seemed loyal once, but I'd seen him kneel to Emily, plotting my downfall. The other grooms, Peter and Michael, were no different. Their ambitions were built on my father's wealth, and their hearts were bound to my stepsister. I wiped my eyes, steadying my breath. The mysterious force that had pulled me back through time, fate perhaps, or some ancient mercy, pulsed within me, urging me to act. "Dad," I said, my voice firm despite the tremor in my chest. "I've made my decision. I want to marry Ryan Carter." The words hung heavy, shattering the room's warmth. My father's pipe clattered to the desk, his eyes widening as if I'd spoken in tongues. "Ryan Carter?" he sputtered. "The commander? Divorced, raising 3 children, a man twice your age? Rachel, have you lost your mind?" I understood his shock. In Harlo Compound, where alliances were currency, the 3 child grooms were my father's investment in our future. Andrew, Peter, and Michael had been plucked from obscurity, raised in our villa, and educated by the finest tutors. My father's dream of securing the Lynn legacy through their success. Ryan, though, was a wild card. A commander in Harlo's militia, his reputation was a mix of awe and suspicion. His rumored divorce and adopted children made him a scandalous choice, his power too great for my father to control. Yet, in my past life, I'd glimpsed Ryan's quiet devotion, his refusal to remarry after my downfall. And there was something else, a childhood promise, half forgotten until now. "Rachel, explain yourself," my father demanded, rising from his chair. "I chose those boys for you, trained, fed, and made them elites. Any one of them is better than a man with baggage." I swallowed, my mind racing. I couldn't tell him the truth. Not about my rebirth, the groom's betrayal, or Emily's schemes. The compound's elite would brand me mad, and my father's trust in his protégés ran deep. Instead, I reached for a memory, one the force of my rebirth had sharpened. "Dad, do you remember the Carter family's visit when I was 10? I asked. "You and Mr. Carter engaged verbally with Ryan and me. It was a jest, but I meant it when I agreed." His expression shifted, surprise softening his anger. The engagement had been a fleeting moment, dismissed when the Carters' influence grew too daunting. My father had feared I'd be overshadowed in their world, so he'd pivoted to the grooms, boys he could mold. "That was years ago," he said, rubbing his temple. "The Carters are powerful, yes, but Ryan's life is complicated. His children, his past. Harlo will talk, Rachel. They'll tear you apart." I met his gaze, unflinching. "Let them talk. I choose Ryan." I'll honor that promise. The weight of my decision settled over us. In Harlo, a woman's marriage was a public contract, scrutinized by elders and gossips alike. Choosing Ryan meant defying the compound's expectations, risking my reputation before I could expose the groom's treachery. But I saw my father's final days, his sunken eyes, his broken spirit, and knew I had no choice. Andrew, Peter, and Michael had stolen our wealth, left us to rot, and fled with Emily to a life of luxury. Emily, whose mother had replaced mine, had orchestrated it all. Her resentment a poison I'd underestimated. I'd protect my father this time, even if it meant facing the compound's scorn alone. "Rachel," my father said, his voice softer now. "You're sure?" I nodded, a spark of resolve igniting within me. I've never been surer. He sighed, a mix of pride and worry in his eyes. "All right, I'll speak to Ryan. But this choice, it's yours to bear." As I left the study, the hearth's warmth at my back, I felt the pulse of that ancient force again, guiding me toward a future I'd forge with my own hands. The groom's betrayal, Emily's lies, they'd meet their reckoning. For now, I'd chosen Ryan with him, a chance to defy the fate that had once destroyed us. The heavy oak door of my father's study clicked shut behind me, muffling the echo of our heated exchange. The hallway of our Harlo Compound villa stretched before me, its polished floors reflecting the chandelier's golden light. My heart still raced from declaring my choice of Ryan Carter, a decision that defied the compound's rigid expectations and my father's carefully laid plans. In my past life, I'd have rushed to Andrew, Peter, or Michael, seeking their approval, blind to their betrayal. I steeled myself, reborn with the truth of their faked deaths and allegiance to Emily. I had to face them, not as the naive girl I'd been, but as a woman determined to rewrite her fate. As I turned the corner, their laughter hit me like a gust of cold wind. There they were, Andrew Lewis, Peter Sullivan, and Michael Evans, lounging in the garden atrium surrounding Emily. Her white gown shimmered under the skylight, her delicate laughter a calculated melody. Andrew's military posture softened as he brushed a lock of hair from her face. Peter's political charm sparkled in his teasing grin. Michael's business-sharp eyes warmed only for her. This scene would have ignited jealousy in my past life, sending me into a spiral of accusations that only deepened their resentment. I'd lashed out at Emily, fueling their narrative of me as cruel, paving the way for their scheme to ruin me. This time, I kept my gaze forward, my steps deliberate, aiming for the staircase to my room. "Rachel!" Emily's voice, syrupy sweet, stopped me. I didn't turn, but Andrew's heavy footsteps closed in, his hand clamping my wrist. "Didn't you hear her call you?" He snapped, his steely eyes narrowing. I met his glare, my pulse steady despite the flicker of old pain. Andrew, once my childhood shadow, had knelt to Emily in my spectral vision, vowing to destroy me. "Let go," I said, my voice calm but edged with steel. He hesitated, surprise flashing across his face. I'd argued and pleaded in the past, but now I pulled free, my silence louder than any outburst. Peter stepped forward, his politician's smile sharp. "What's this, Rachel? Too proud to acknowledge Emily now?" Michael, leaning against a pillar, smirked. "Or are you sulking because your father's pushing Andrew on you again?" Laced with the compound's gossip, their taunts stung, but I saw them for what they were. Pawns in Emily's game, blind to her manipulation. Watching from behind, Emily tilted her head, her eyes glinting with mock innocence. "Sis, I didn't mean to upset you," she said, her voice trembling enough to draw their sympathy. The performance was flawless, but I knew the truth. She'd orchestrated their devotion, stealing my family's wealth and leaving us to rot. I could have exposed her then, could have shouted about their faked deaths, her lies. But Harlot's elite would dismiss me as unhinged, and my father, still trusting the Grooms, would be heartbroken. Instead, I said, "I have nothing to say to you, Emily." Her eyes widened, a flicker of unease breaking her facade. The Grooms bristled, ready to defend her, but a deep voice cut through the atrium before they could. "Miss Lynn." I turned, and there stood Ryan Carter, his militia uniform crisp, his presence commanding the room. The Grooms froze, their bravado shrinking under his shadow. In Harlo, Ryan was untouchable, a commander whose power dwarfed their ambitions. He stepped forward, a beautifully wrapped box in his hands, its silk ribbon catching the light. "For the wedding in 7 days," he said, his voice steady but warm. "Your dress was made as you requested." I blinked, caught off guard. I hadn't spoken to Ryan since my rebirth, yet here he was, acting on my father's swift summons. Or perhaps his instinct. The Grooms' faces darkened, their whispers barely concealed. "Carter? With her?" Peter muttered. Michael's smirk faded, his business mind calculating the threat. Andrew's jaw tightened, his military pride wounded by Ryan's effortless authority. I took the box, my fingers brushing Ryan's calloused hand. His eyes, a storm of gray, held mine for a moment, and I saw something. Recognition, maybe, of the childhood promise I'd invoked. "Thank you," I said, my voice softer than I intended. He nodded, the corner of his mouth lifting in a rare, almost teasing smile. "I've admired you for some time, Miss Lynn." The words, delivered with quiet conviction, flushed my cheeks. Was he recalling our childhood, when I'd chased him, declaring I'd marry him? Or was this part of the role he'd agreed to play? Either way, his presence grounded me, a shield against the Groom's venom. Emily's laugh broke the moment, sharp and forced. "Oh, Rachel, how romantic! But surely Commander Carter deserves someone untainted by rumors. Her barb, veiled as a concern, was aimed at my cursed reputation. The grooms chuckled, but Ryan's gaze didn't waver from me. "Rumors don't sway me," he said coolly, his tone silencing their laughter. "I see what's real." With a nod, he turned, his boots echoing as he left the atrium. The grooms and Emily stood speechless, their power diminished in his wake. I clutched the box, my resolve hardening. In my past life, I'd let their taunts unravel me, driving a wedge between me and my father. Now I saw their game, Emily's manipulation, their complicity, and I wouldn't play. The dress in my hands was more than fabric. It symbolized my chosen future, one where Ryan, not the grooms, stood by me. Their whispers faded as I climbed the stairs, but I knew this was only the beginning. Emily's schemes, the groom's betrayal, Harlo's judgment, they'd test me. But I was no longer the girl they'd broken. I was Rachel Lynn, reborn, and I'd face my past to forge my path. The weight of the silk-wrapped box, Ryan's wedding dress, steadied me as I retreated to my room in the Lynn villa, the echoes of Emily's taunts and the groom's sneers fading behind me. Harlo Compound's opulent halls, with their gilded mirrors and velvet drapes, felt stifling now, a reminder of the scrutiny I'd face for choosing Ryan Carter over the 3 child grooms my father had groomed for greatness. In my past life, I'd crumbled under their accusations, letting their lies about my character drive me to despair. Reborn, I knew the truth. Andrew, Peter, and Michael had faked their deaths to escape me, pledging themselves to Emily while stealing my family's fortune. But one lie burned deeper than the rest, and it was time to confront it. A sharp knock jolted me from my thoughts. I opened the door to find Andrew Lewis, his military posture rigid, his eyes blazing with anger and unease. "Rachel, we need to talk," he said, stepping inside uninvited. His presence filled the room, a reminder of the boy I'd once chased through our gardens, now a man who'd betrayed me. In my spectral vision after death, I'd seen him kneel to Emily, vowing to ruin me for her sake. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice cool, though my pulse quickened. I'd avoided their traps in the atrium, but Andrew's directness suggested a new gambit. He paced, his boots scuffing the rug. "I've made up my mind. I'm marrying Emily." His words were a challenge, daring me to react. In my past life, I'd have raged, giving him the ammunition to paint me as jealous. Now, I raised an eyebrow, calm, and his jaw tightened, surprised by my indifference. "I need your blessing," he said, his voice lowering. "If you refuse, the Lynn family will regret it. You know what we're capable of. Peter's political connections, Michael's wealth, my military rank." The threat hung heavy, a glimpse of the power they'd wielded to destroy us before. I studied him, seeing the traitor and the boy my father had raised. Andrew, Peter, and Michael owed their success to George Lynn's patronage, his wealth, his tutors, and his introductions to Harlo's elite. Yet they'd turned on us, driven by a loyalty to Emily they believed was noble. I knew that loyalty stemmed from a lie I'd uncovered in my reborn clarity. "Your loyalty to Emily," I said, stepping closer, "is because she saved you during the avalanche. When were you 3 trapped on Mount Harlo?" Andrew froze, his eyes narrowing. "How do you know about that?" His voice was sharp, but I saw a flicker of doubt. 7 years ago, the avalanche had been a defining moment for them. A training mission gone wrong. A blizzard burying their squad. The compound had mourned, assuming them lost, until a rescuer brought them back. They'd sworn it was Emily, her bravery sealing their devotion. But I remembered that night. The biting cold, the screams, the blood on my hands. "She didn't save you," I said, my voice steady. "I did." He laughed, a harsh bark, but it faltered as I rolled up my sleeve, revealing jagged scars across my forearm. "Look," I said. "Icicles tore me apart as I dug you out. I was 16, untrained, defying every warning to climb that mountain alone. I carried you to safety, Andrew, while my arm bled through my coat." His eyes locked on the scars, his face paling. In my past life, I'd hidden them, ashamed of their ugliness. Emily had claimed the credit, spinning a tale of heroism while I was sent abroad to recover, my absence letting her lie to take root. "No," he muttered, shaking his head. "Emily said, She was there, She lied. I cut in, my voice low but fierce. You were half dead, delirious. Emily was safe in the compound, weaving her story while I nearly froze. Ask yourself, where are her scars? A rescuer would have marks, Andrew. His hands clenched, doubt creeping into his steely gaze. The groom's devotion to Emily wasn't just love. It was gratitude, a debt they thought they owed. They'd been orphans, scrappy and proud, and her supposed sacrifice had bound them to her. My father's wealth had given them status, but Emily's lie gave them purpose. Before he could respond, the door creaked open. Emily stood there, her white gown pristine, her smile a mask of sweetness. Andrew, is everything all right? She asked, her voice trembling enough to draw his concern. She glanced at me, her eyes glinting with calculation, sensing the shift in the air. Rachel, you're not upsetting him, are you? Her words were a trap, meant to provoke and make me the villain again. In my past life, I'd have taken the bait, shouting accusations that pushed the groom further into her arms. Now I smiled, cold and controlled. We were reminiscing, and I talked about Mount Harlo. Her smile flickered, a crack in her facade. Andrew's gaze darted between us, his doubt now a tangible weight. We'll talk later, he said, his voice gruff, and he brushed past Emily, leaving us alone. She stepped closer, her sweetness vanishing. Stay out of this, Rachel, she hissed. They're mine. I held her gaze, seeing the girl who'd orchestrated my mother's downfall, who'd stolen my family's future. Not for long, I said softly and turned away, the scars on my arm a silent vow. The truth was out, a seed of doubt planted. Emily's lies, the groom's betrayal. They'd unravel, and I'd be there to see it fall. The door to my room clicked shut, sealing out Emily's venomous hiss and the echo of Andrew's retreating footsteps. The Lynn villa's silence pressed against me, its velvet curtains and mahogany panels starkly contrasting the storm brewing within. My arm, still exposed with its jagged scars, throbbed faintly, a reminder of the truth I'd just unveiled. I, not Emily, had saved Andrew, Peter, and Michael from the Mount Harlo avalanche. The doubt in Andrew's eyes had been a small victory, a crack in the groom's blind devotion to my stepsister. But Emily's fleeting unease told me she'd strike back, hard. In my past life, I'd underestimated her, letting her lies paint me as the villain. Reborn, I braced for her next move, knowing Harlo Compound's judgmental elite would amplify her schemes. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts, tentative at first, then insistent. I hesitated, the memory of Andrew's intrusion fresh, but opened the door to find Emily alone, her white gown pristine, her smile a fragile mask. Rachel, can we talk? Just us sisters? Her voice was honeyed, but her eyes glinted with calculation. In my past life, I'd have slammed the door, giving her the reaction she craved. Now, I stepped aside, gesturing her in. I said, say what you came to say, my tone even though my pulse quickened. The room felt smaller with her in it, the air charged with the weight of our hidden war. She perched on the edge of my bed, folding her hands demurely. I know you're upset about Andrew, she began, her voice trembling enough to seem sincere. But I love him, Rachel. And he loves me. Why can't you let us be happy? Her words were a performance crafted to provoke, to make me the jealous sister Harlo's gossip expected. I crossed my arms, silent, watching her facade waver. Her eyes narrowed and the mask slipped. You think you're clever, don't you? She hissed. Telling Andrew about the avalanche, showing off your scars. You'll never take them from me. They're mine, just like everything else you've lost. Her venom stirred a memory. My mother's laughter, her warm hands braiding my hair. Emily's mother, Clara, had replaced her, a shadow in our villa after my mother's sudden death. I'd been told it was an illness, but Emily's smugness now hinted at something darker. What do you mean, everything else? I asked, my voice low, dread pooling in my chest. She leaned closer, a twisted smile curling her lips. Your mother was so easy, Rachel. I was 9 when I told her I was 3 months younger than you, implying your father's betrayal. She unraveled, convinced she'd failed him. One whispered lie, and she jumped from the East Tower. Clara took her place before the body was cold. The words hit like a physical blow, my breath catching. My mother's suicide, a wound I'd carried for years, was Emily's doing? Her childish cruelty, fueled by Clara's ambition to rise from maid to mistress, had destroyed my family's heart. Fury surged, my hand rising before I could think. "You monster!" I spat, aiming to slap her. But Emily was faster, her eyes gleaming with triumph. She threw herself backward, tumbling to the floor with a staged cry, her gown artfully disheveled. "Rachel, no!" she wailed, loud enough for the villa to hear. Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Andrew burst in, followed by Peter and Michael, their faces contorting with rage as they saw Emily crumpled, clutching her cheek. "What did you do?" Andrew roared, kneeling beside her. Emily sobbed, clinging to him. "She hit me, Andrew. I only wanted peace." I opened my mouth to protest, but Peter's hand clamped my arm, his political charm replaced by menace. "You're out of control," he snarled. Michael's cold gaze fixed on me. "This ends now." Before I could react, they dragged me down the hall, their grip bruising. My pleas, "She's lying, she fell," were drowned by Emily's theatrical sobs. They shoved me into the isolation room, a cramped, windowless cell in the villa's underbelly used for storing old records. The door slammed, the lock clicking with finality. Darkness swallowed me, the walls closing in, my claustrophobia. A terror from childhood, known to all in the villa, surging like a tide. My chest tightened, breaths shallow, panic clawing at my mind. They knew this could kill me, yet for Emily, they'd risk my life. I pounded the door, my screams hoarse, but the villa's thick walls muffled them. My vision blurred, the air thinned, and my body slid to the cold floor. In my past life, I'd trusted the Grooms, blind to their betrayal until it was too late. Now, trapped by their hands, I felt the weight of that mistake. My thoughts flickered to Ryan, his steady gaze, the dress he'd given me. Then to my father, whose trust in the Grooms I hadn't yet broken. I couldn't die here, not when I'd been given a second chance to save him. As consciousness slipped, a violent crash shattered the silence. The door splintered, light flooded in, and the rapid thud of combat boots reached me. Strong arms lifted me, a familiar voice cutting through the fog. "Rachel, stay with me." The last thing I saw was Ryan Carter's face, etched with urgency before darkness claimed me. Emily's cruelty had pushed me to the edge, but Ryan's rescue was a lifeline. The truth about her lies, her mother's schemes, burned brighter than ever. I'd survive this. When I did, Emily would face the reckoning she'd earned. The sterile scent of antiseptic stung my nose as I blinked awake, the harsh glow of overhead lights piercing my vision. My body ached, my throat raw, as if I'd screamed for hours. I was in a hospital bed, the Lynn family's private wing in Harlo Compound's medical center. Its white walls a stark contrast to the suffocating darkness of the isolation room. My father's face hovered above me, his ruddy cheeks streaked with tears, his strong hands gripping mine. "Rachel, thank God," he whispered, his voice breaking. "You're awake." The memory of Emily's frame-up, the Groom's betrayal, and the crushing panic of that cell flooded back. But so did Ryan Carter's voice, pulling me from the brink. "How long?" I croaked, my voice barely audible. My father's eyes, heavy with guilt, met mine. 5 days. You've been unconscious, Rachel. The wedding's tomorrow. 5 days lost to the trauma of claustrophobia, a fear the Grooms had exploited to silence me. My chest tightened, not from panic but from the weight of what I'd nearly lost. My second chance, my father's trust, my future with Ryan. Yet I was alive, saved by Ryan's timely rescue, a debt I couldn't yet fathom. "You're safe now," my father said, brushing my hair from my forehead. "But those boys, they'll pay for this." I glanced past him, noticing 3 figures kneeling at the foot of my bed, Andrew, Peter, and Michael. Their faces were ashen, their usual arrogance replaced by a mix of fear and shame. Andrew's military posture sagged, his eyes avoiding mine. Peter's charming smile was gone, his hands clasped tightly. Michael's sharp gaze darted nervously. In my past life, their betrayal, faking their deaths for Emily, had gone unpunished, leaving me cursed and alone. They faced consequences, but their presence stirred no anger, only pity. They were pawns, dazzled by Emily's lies, blind to the truth I'd revealed about the avalanche. "Dad," I said, my voice steadier, "let it go." His head snapped up, shock etching his features. "Let it go? They locked you in that room knowing your fear. You could have died." I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his warmth. "The wedding's tomorrow. I need to focus on Ryan and us. Punishing them won't change the past." My father's jaw tightened, but he nodded, pain and pride warring in his eyes. The grooms looked stunned, expecting the fiery Rachel who'd once lashed out. But I wasn't that girl anymore. Forgiving them wasn't a weakness. It was a choice to reclaim my future, to break free from their hold. A nurse entered, mentioning therapy sessions Ryan had arranged to help me manage my claustrophobia. The practical yet intimate gesture warmed me, a reminder of his quiet care. "Please take me home," I urged my father. "I need to prepare." He hesitated, then helped me from the bed, his arm steadying me as we left the grooms behind, their silence louder than any apology. The villa welcomed me with its familiar opulence, marble floors, rose-scented air, but it felt different, a battleground where Emily's schemes had nearly won. I headed straight to the attic, a dusty haven of memories tucked under the villa's eaves. Boxes overflowed with relics of my youth with the grooms, handwritten notes from Andrew, sketching battle plans, Peter's campaign speeches scrawled in my margins, Michael's ledger doodles, dreaming of empires. Yellowed photographs captured us laughing, their faces bright with promise. Love letters, unsent, poured out of my girlhood heart. Each item was a thread to the past, a weight I'd carried through my cursed life. In my past life, I'd clung to these mourning men who'd never loved me. I saw them for what they were, illusions, tethering me to pain. I lit a candle, its flame dancing in the attic's gloom, and began sorting. Notes, sketches, letters. I fed them to a small metal bin, watching flames curl the edges. I kept photographs not for sentiment, but as a reminder of my strength. The act was deliberate, a purging of the girl who'd trusted unquestioningly. My scars from the avalanche that saved the grooms itched faintly, grounding me. Emily had stolen that heroism, just as she'd stolen my mother's life with a whispered lie. But she wouldn't steal my future. The wedding dress Ryan had given me waited downstairs, a symbol of the path I'd chosen. As the last letter burned, night fell, the attic's shadows softening. I descended, exhausted but lighter, my heart unburdened. In my room, I collapsed onto the bed, the silk box from Ryan catching the moonlight. Tomorrow, I'd wear that dress and stand beside a man who saw me, not the cursed woman Harlo whispered about. Emily and the grooms would try again. I knew their desperation, but I was ready. The attic's ashes marked the end of my past. From them, I'd rise, not as a victim, but as Rachel Lynn, reborn to claim her life and protect her father from the lies that had once destroyed them. The dawn of my wedding day broke over Harlo Compound, its golden light filtering through my bedroom's stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscope patterns on the silk box Ryan Carter had given me. The dress within was my armor, a symbol of the future I'd chosen against the betrayal of Andrew, Peter, and Michael, my father's childhood who'd faked their deaths for Emily in my past life. After surviving Emily's frame-up and the isolation room's terror, I'd risen stronger, my resolve forged in the ashes of old mementos. But as I reached for the box, a rustling sound alerted me. Before I could turn, rough hands seized me, binding my wrists and ankles with coarse rope. Emily's voice, low and venomous, hissed in my ear. "You won't steal this day, Rachel." She shoved me into the wardrobe, its wooden slats creaking as she slammed the door. Through the narrow gaps, I saw her slip into my wedding dress, the white silk mocking me as it draped her frame. Her laughter was triumphant, her eyes glinting with the same cruelty that had driven my mother to suicide. "Andrew," she called, opening the bedroom door. He entered, his military bearing softened by her presence, and kissed her without hesitation, their embrace a dagger to my heart. "Once you marry Rachel," Emily murmured, her voice breathy, "find an excuse to say she died. Peter and Michael will follow. Then we'll all be free, forever yours." The plan echoed their past life's treachery, faking deaths to escape me. leaving my family in ruin. My breath hitched, not from the wardrobe's confines, but from the audacity of their scheme. Emily's gaze flicked to me, taunting, as she nestled closer to Andrew. "From the day I saw you, Rachel, I hated you," she said, loud enough for me to hear. "The precious Lynn daughter handed everything. I was the maid's child, but swore I'd take it all, your groom, status, and life." Her words, a twisted mirror of her mother Clara's ambition, fueled my fury. I strained against the ropes, the knots biting my skin, but my claustrophobia, still raw from the isolation room, threatened to paralyze me. I forced slow breaths, drawing on the therapy Ryan had arranged, focusing on the wedding I couldn't lose. Hours crawled by, Emily humming a cruel serenade as she primped in my mirror. The villa stirred, the wedding team's voices drifting upstairs. My fingers, scraped raw, finally loosened a knot, the ropes falling as I pushed the wardrobe open. Emily spun, her face blanching, but I moved faster, slipping into the bathroom to don a spare gown Ryan had sent, a backup as if he'd sensed trouble. The silk clung to me, its weight grounding my resolve. I descended to the ceremony hall, its chandeliers glittering, Harlo's elite murmuring in their velvet seats. My father, resplendent in a traditional suit, beamed, unaware of the chaos above. I stood at the altar, the red carpet stretching before me, my heart steady despite the late hour. Whispers grew. Where was the groom? Then Peter and Michael strode in, their smirks sharp as blades. "The groom's not coming, folks," Peter announced, his politician's voice carrying. Michael's businesslike sneer followed. "Rachel's been stood up." What a shame. The crowd gasped, Harlo's gossip machine whirring, ready to brand me cursed again. My father's face fell, his trust in Ryan wavering. I gripped the altar, refusing to break, knowing Emily's hand in this. Before their mockery could land, the hall's double doors crashed open. "Who says I'm not coming?" Ryan Carter's voice, deep and commanding, silenced the room. He stepped into view, his militia uniform pristine, his gray eyes locking on mine with unshakable certainty. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Harlo's elite stunned by the commander's presence. Peter and Michael froze, their bravado crumbling under his authority. My father's relief was palpable, and his nod to me was a silent apology. I seized the officiant's microphone, my voice ringing clear. "Let me introduce my husband, Ryan Carter of Harlo." Ryan crossed the carpet, his stride unwavering, and took my hand, his fingers lacing with mine. His warm and steady touch banished the echoes of Emily's cruelty. "You're radiant," he murmured, a faint smile softening his stern features. The crowd erupted in applause, their earlier doubts drowned by his commanding presence. Peter and Michael's faces twisted, their plan to humiliate me thwarted. Somewhere in the villa, Emily lurked, her scheme unraveling. But I cared only for this moment, standing with Ryan, defying the groom's betrayal and Harlo's judgment. The wedding wasn't over, and Emily's desperation would strike again. But with Ryan beside me, I was ready to face her and claim the future I'd fought for. The wedding hall of Harlo Compound glowed with chandelier light, the air thick with the scent of roses and the buzz of its elite guests. I stood at the altar, my hand in Ryan Carter's, his steady grip anchoring me against the storm of Peter and Michael's mockery moments before. Their attempt to humiliate me, declaring Ryan's absence, had crumbled when he strode in, his commander's presence silencing their sneers. My bold announcement, "Meet my husband, Ryan Carter of Harlo," sparked thunderous applause, Harlo's fickle elite swaying to the rhythm of power. But Peter and Michael, their faces stiff with rage, weren't done. In my past life, their betrayal, faking deaths for Emily, had gone unchallenged. Reborn, I'd set the stage for their reckoning, which began now. Peter, ever the politician, recovered first, his smile forced as he stepped forward. "Rachel, you've outdone yourself," he said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "How much did your billionaire daddy pay Commander Carter to play along?" The crowd's murmurs grew, Harlo's gossip mill eager for scandal. Michael, his business-sharp eyes glinting, joined in. "A commander for a cursed woman? Quite the deal, George." Their words, barbed with the compound's whispers about my past, aimed to unravel my triumph. My father, seated in the front row, stiffened, his trust in the grooms he'd raised now a raw wound. I tightened my grip on Ryan's hand, ready to retort. But he spoke first, his voice calm and cutting. "I'm not blind, Sullivan. I don't mistake trash for treasure, nor bite the hand that feeds me." His words, sharp as a blade, hushed the room. Harlo's elite knew the truth he hinted at. Andrew, Peter, and Michael owed their status to my father, George Lynn. His wealth had fed them, his tutors shaped them, and his introductions opened doors. Yet they stood here, mocking the family that had lifted them from obscurity. Their ingratitude laid bare. Before the crowd could process Ryan's rebuke, a figure stormed through the aisle. Mr. Xiao, the revered Confucian scholar who'd mentored the Grooms. His silver hair gleamed under the chandeliers, his face a mask of fury. "You ungrateful bastards!" he roared, his cane slamming the floor. The crowd gasped, unused to such passion from the stoic teacher. Peter and Michael recoiled, their confidence shattering. Mr. Xiao turned to Peter, his hand flashing in a sharp slap. "George Lynn treated you like sons and gave you everything. Education, connections, a future. And this is your repayment?" Peter clutched his cheek, stunned, while Michael stammered, "Sir, we—" Mr. Xiao cut him off, striking Michael's face with equal force. "Silence! You're not fit to call yourselves human." The hall fell silent, Harlo's elite frozen by the spectacle. I stood still, my heart pounding, knowing the weight of this moment. In my past life, the Grooms' betrayal had been hidden, their success credited to talent. Now, the truth spilled out, and I'd helped orchestrate it. My father rose, his traditional suit lending him quiet dignity. "Mr. A. Xiao, please," he said, but his voice carried no plea, only resolve. He faced the crowd, his gaze sweeping over the Grooms. "When I took these boys in, they were starving, scavenging for scraps. I saw potential, so I invested everything. My wealth, my pride. I knelt before Mr. Xiao, a man who'd sworn never to teach again, and begged him to mentor them. His voice cracked, betraying the pain of their betrayal. He broke his vow for me, for them. And they repay us with this?" The crowd murmured, their earlier gossip turning to disgust. Harlo's elite, obsessed with lineage and loyalty, saw the Grooms anew, not as prodigies, but as opportunists. Peter's political charm faded, his face pale. Michael's business acumen seemed hollow, his eyes darting for an escape. I stepped forward, my voice clear. "They climbed on your back, Dad, using your name to build theirs. Every time they faltered, you cleaned their messes. And now they dare mock us?" My words, fueled by the memory of my father's starvation in my past life, carried the weight of truth. Mr. Xiao nodded, his fury softening to sorrow. "I saw promise in them, Rachel, but your father's sincerity moved me. They'd be nothing without him, picking through garbage, not dining with elites." The Grooms' heads bowed, their shame palpable. Ryan squeezed my hand, his gray eyes proud. "You've said enough," he murmured, guiding me back to the altar. Sensing the shift, the officiant resumed the ceremony. But the air had changed. Harlo's elite now saw the Grooms as pariahs, their betrayal a stain no charm could erase. Peter and Michael slunk to the back, their defiance broken. Hidden somewhere in the villa, Emily would hear of this, her plan to ruin me unraveling. In my past life, the Grooms had escaped with her, leaving me cursed. Their ingratitude was exposed, and I stood taller, Ryan at my side. The wedding continued, but at this moment, Mr. Xiao's rage, my father's truth, my voice, was a victory. The Grooms' reckoning wasn't complete, but the seeds were sown, and I'd be there when they reaped what they'd sown. The wedding hall of Harlo Compound pulsed with tension, the chandelier's golden light casting long shadows over the elite guests. Ryan Carter's hand, warm and steady in mine, grounded me as the echoes of Mr. Xiao's rebuke and my father's truth still lingered. Peter and Michael, their ingratitude exposed, had slunk to the hall's edges, their faces pale under Harlo's judgmental gaze. In my past life, Andrew, Peter, and Michael had faked their deaths to join Emily, leaving me cursed and my father starved. Reborn, I'd turned their betrayal against them, and now, with the crowd's favor on my side, the stage was set for the final truth, the one that would shatter Emily's hold over the Grooms. The hall's double doors burst open, a commotion drawing every eye. 2 figures, bound with ropes, were dragged in by Ryan's militia guards. His military uniform wrinkled. Andrew Lewis struggled against his bonds, his eyes wild with defiance. Beside him was Emily, her white gown torn, her calculated sweetness replaced by raw panic. Their luggage ripped open, spilled gold bars, bonja and jewels, my family's stolen wealth, across the marble floor. The crowd gasped, Harlo's elite whispering furiously. My father's face hardened, the betrayal he'd only begun to grasp, now undeniable. Andrew's gaze found me, and he shouted, "Rachel, this is madness! Forced love never lasts. Have some self-respect. I told you I'd rather die than marry you." His words, steeped in delusion, assumed I still craved him, blind to my choice of Ryan. In my past life, his rejection had broken me. Now it was laughable. Before I could respond, my father stepped forward, his voice like thunder. "Do you think marrying my daughter is an insult, boy? After all I gave you?" Andrew faltered, his arrogance wilting under George Lynn's presence, the man who'd raised him from nothing. Sensing the tide turning, Emily dropped to her knees, tears brimming. "Uncle George, please," she sobbed, clutching his suit. "I've only ever seen Rachel as your true daughter. Andrew and I love each other. Why must she tear us apart?" Perfected over the years, her performance might have swayed the crowd once, but Ryan's low laugh cut through, cold and mocking. "Who's tearing others apart, Emily?" he said, his gray eyes piercing. "Your schemes aren't as flawless as you think." He raised a hand, signaling, and a bloodied figure was dragged in. Dr. Shu, the physician who'd tended the Grooms after the Mount Harlo avalanche. Dr. Shu, barely conscious, lunged at Emily, his voice hoarse. "You seduced me to forge the rescue records, then tried to kill me to bury the truth." The crowd recoiled as he spilled her deceit. "Rachel saved them, climbed that mountain alone, and bled for them. You stole her heroism and lied to bind them to you." Emily gasped, her facade cracking as Dr. Shu's words echoed. I stepped forward, rolling up my sleeve to reveal the jagged scars from that night 7 years ago. Icicles tearing my arm as I dug Andrew, Peter, and Michael from the snow. The hall fell silent, Harlo's elite staring at the proof of my sacrifice. Andrew's eyes widened, his voice a whisper. "It was you?" He stumbled toward me, yanking my sleeve higher, the scars undeniable. "No, it can't be," Emily said. His voice trailed off, the truth dawning. Peter and Michael, drawn forward, paled, their faces mirroring his shock. "You were abroad," Peter muttered, clinging to Emily's lie. I shook my head, my voice steady. I was recovering and sent away while Emily took credit. "Look at her. Where are her scars? A rescuer would have marks." Emily, frozen, offered no defense, her silence damning. Ryan's hand tightened on mine, his voice low. "Enough, Andrew. Please stay away from her." He kicked Andrew back, the military man collapsing, his pride shattered. Emily rushed to him, still pleading. "Andrew, it was me. Rachel bribed him. She's lying." But Andrew's fury turned on her. "No scratches, Emily, not one. I saw my arm sliced by an icicle, and I was bedridden for weeks. How are you unmarked?" His voice broke, the gratitude that had bound him to her crumbling. "You lied to us all." The crowd's murmurs turned to outrage, Harlo's elite condemning Emily's deceit. My father's eyes, filled with pain, met mine. His trust in the Grooms and Emily shattered. "Rachel," he said softly, "you carried that alone?" I nodded, the weight of my silence lifting. In my past life, Emily's lie had fueled their betrayal, costing me everything. Now the truth freed me. Ryan signaled his guards, who began clearing the hall of the bound captives. "This ends here," he said, his authority final. Emily's sobs faded as she was dragged away, the Grooms following, their remorse too late. The wedding resumed, but the truth unveiled. My heroism, their betrayal, marked a victory sweeter than any vow, a step closer to the future I'd fought for. The Harlo Compound wedding hall hummed with renewed energy, the chandelier's glow softening the tension of Emily's exposure and the Groom's disgrace. Ryan Carter stood beside me, his hand a steady anchor as the officiant resumed the ceremony. The truth about my avalanche rescue had shattered Emily's lies. leaving Andrew, Peter, and Michael humiliated before Harlo's elite. In my past life, their betrayal, faking deaths to join Emily, had left me cursed, and my father broken. Reborn, I'd turned their schemes against them, and now with Ryan's commanding presence, I was steps from a future untainted by their treachery. Yet I knew Emily's desperation wouldn't end quietly. Ryan's men had cleared the hall of the bound captives, Emily, Andrew, and their stolen wealth, leaving only the elite guests, their earlier gossip replaced by odd murmurs. My father, George Lynn, stood tall in his traditional suit, his eyes shining with pride as he watched me. The officiant's words flowed, binding Ryan and me, but a new ritual loomed, offering tea to my mother-in-law. As I turned, a woman approached, her elegance unmistakable. Lillian Carter, one of Harlo's most revered socialites. Her eyes brimmed with tears, her composure unraveling as she clasped my hands. "Rachel, dear, thank you for marrying my son," she said, her voice trembling. That divorce rumor. It was a lie. Ryan's marriage was a cover for a militia mission, nothing more. And those children? Adopted, not his own. My boy's heart has always been yours. Her words stunned me, rewriting the whispers I'd heard in my past life. I'd assumed Ryan mourned a lost love, but Lillian's revelation repainted him. A man of duty, unburdened by a past wife whose quiet devotion awaited me. Ryan's ears reddened, his usual stoicism faltering as he cleared his throat. "Mother, enough," he muttered, but his hand squeezed mine, a silent acknowledgement. The crowd cooed, Harlo's elite charmed by the romance, their judgment now firmly in our favor. I smiled, warmth spreading through me, the weight of my cursed label lifting with each vow. The ceremony concluded, and Ryan lifted my veil, his gray eyes soft with a promise I was beginning to understand. We moved to the banquet hall, its tables laden with crystal and roses, but a commotion at the entrance halted us. 4 figures stumbled in, disheveled and flushed, their limbs tangled in a scandalous tableau. Emily, Andrew, Peter, and Michael, caught in a compromising heap, their clothes askew, drew gasps from the guests. Emily's eyes, wild with desperation, met mine, her plan clear. She'd tried to drug Andrew to force his commitment, but the wine, mislabeled, had ensnared all 3 grooms in a chaotic public disgrace. Ryan acted swiftly, his guards surrounding the group as he uncovered the truth. "Emily's final scheme," he said, his voice low but audible. She spiked the wine, hoping to trap Andrew, but dragging them down backfired. The crowd recoiled, Harlo's elite whispering of scandal, their disgust sealing Emily's ruin. My father stepped forward, his face a mask of resolve. "Enough," he declared, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Andrew, Peter, Michael, you're no longer part of this family. Every opportunity, every connection I gave you is severed. You're on your own." The grooms, their faces ashen, offered no defense, their pride crushed by their folly. Emily, her sobs ignored, was escorted out, her dream of stealing my life reduced to ashes. In my past life, their betrayal had cost me everything. My reputation, my father's fortune, my hope. Their self-inflicted ruin was justice. A circle closed by their greed and Emily's malice. My father turned to me, his eyes softening. "Rachel, I'm sorry I trusted them," he said quietly. I hugged him, whispering, "We're free now, Dad." Ryan signaled for the banquet to resume, and we took our seats, the hall's opulence a backdrop to our victory. Harlo's elite toasted us, their earlier doubts forgotten, their praise now a shield against future gossip. As Ryan poured me a glass of wine, his fingers brushed mine, a playful glint in his eyes. "To new beginnings," he said, his voice warm. I clinked my glass to his, the weight of my past, Emily's lies, the groom's betrayal, falling away. The once a battleground wedding was now a celebration, a testament to the future I'd fought for. Later, as Ryan carried me to our suite, the guests' cheers fading, I felt a quiet peace. Emily and the grooms were gone, their fate sealed by their actions. Harlo's judgment, once my curse, now crowned me a survivor. With Ryan beside me and my father's love restored, I was no longer the girl who'd lost everything. I was Rachel Lynn, reborn, standing at the dawn of a life I'd earned, ready for whatever came next. The Harlo Compound, with its marble villas and rose-laden gardens, faded into a warm blur as I settled into married life with Ryan Carter. Our home, a quiet estate on the compound's edge, was a sanctuary of soft linens and morning light, a far cry from the battleground of my wedding day. In my past life, Andrew Peter and Michael's betrayal, faking their deaths for Emily, had left me cursed, my father starved, and my heart broken. Reborn, I'd exposed their lies, from Emily's stolen avalanche heroism to their theft of our wealth, and stood triumphant beside Ryan, Harlo's elite, now my allies. The scars on my arm, proof of my sacrifice, no longer shamed me. They were badges of a life reclaimed. Ryan treated me like a treasure, his commander's stoicism melting into gestures that lit my days. If I mentioned a craving for spiced tea, it appeared by sunrise, steaming in a porcelain cup. If I sighed over a rare book, he'd track it down, his gray eyes glinting with pride as he handed it over. His unwavering devotion stirred a quiet unease. Why me, after all I'd endured? One evening, as we sat by our hearth, its crackle filling the silence, I couldn't hold back. "Ryan," I asked, his hand warm around mine, "why are you so good to me?" He chuckled a low sound that warmed the room. "You don't remember, do you? That spoiled little girl who thought I was handsome stole something from me." I blinked, confused, as he leaned closer, his teasing smile deepening. "When you were 8, your father left you at our neighbors, my family, when work kept him away. You were a menace, Rachel, chasing me, declaring you'd marry me. One day, you stole my first kiss right under the oak in our garden, then ran off like it was nothing." A memory surfaced, vivid and searing. A boy with stormy eyes, my bold peck on his cheek, my giggle as I fled. My face burned, embarrassment flooding me. "I was a child," I protested, pinching his arm. Ryan laughed, pulling me into his embrace. "You forgot me, but I never did. That girl who saw me, not my family's name, she stayed with me." His words unlocked the depth of his gift. The wedding dress, his rescue from the isolation room, and his unwavering stand at the altar. "When I said I'd admired you for a long time," he murmured, "I meant it. You grew into a woman who fought for her father, for truth. I'm just glad fate gave me a chance." My cheeks flushed, but I leaned into him, the hearth's glow mirroring the warmth in my chest. In my past life, I'd assumed Ryan mourned another. Now I knew his heart had waited, tied to a childhood vow I'd made in jest. Harlo's whispers of my curse faded, replaced by a love that felt like home. Months later, at a grand banquet in the compound's central hall, I stood beside Ryan, my father's gentle gaze on us. The elite toasted our union, their earlier judgments buried under our triumph. Whispers reached me of the Grooms and Emily's fate, a final note in their downfall. Stripped of my father's support, Andrew, Peter, and Michael had fallen from grace. Once a military star, Andrew drifted into obscurity. Peter's political charm failed without connections. Michael, the business prodigy, gambled away his wealth. Emily, their supposed heart, was abandoned, sold off by the men she'd manipulated when her schemes collapsed. In a final act of despair, she set a fire that consumed them all. Their ashes lost to time, erased from Harlo's memory. I tightened my grip on Ryan's hand, the news stirring no pity, only closure. In my past life, their betrayal had stolen my future, leaving my father to die dreaming of cornbread. Now, he stood beside me, robust and proud, his laughter filling the hall. The Grooms and Emily had reaped what they'd sown, their ruin a mirror of the pain they'd inflicted. I turned to Ryan, his smile a quiet promise, and to my father, whose love had anchored me through rebirth. The banquet's opulence, crystal flutes, silk drapes, paled against the joy of this moment, a life free of regrets. As we danced under the chandeliers, Ryan's arms steady, I felt the pulse of that ancient force that had granted me this second chance. Harlo's elite, once my judges, now celebrated me. But their praise mattered less than the family I'd saved. Emily's lies, the groom's treachery, my mother's loss, they were shadows, powerless against the light of this redemption. I was Rachel Lynn, no longer cursed, but whole, loved, and ready for whatever dawn brought. My heart full in the arms of the boy I'd once promised to marry.